Hello friends, I am Abhishek Sanghvi. Today we will go through a POC of building a cloud-enabled, production-ready, modernized software application for the life insurance business using no-code, low-code development platform. Nowadays, in most organizations, there is a strong demand for faster software development and faster delivery to production. For any software application to be developed and delivered faster, we need to refine a few of the below key areas: design, development, delivery, and operations, which includes post-production maintenance. Here, the first challenge is that designs are usually in the form of lengthy documents, which is a time-consuming activity for programmers to decipher. And sometimes the specifications can be inferred differently, causing the implementation to vary from business expectations. The second challenge is low productivity development tooling that has limited features, which is the case with most of the legacy applications. Today's programmers expect tools which help to do faster development, faster testing, and faster troubleshooting. Due to the lack of these tools, programmer productivity reduces. This unfairly puts the blame on the development team, but in reality, the problem is with the technology selection. The third challenge is the lack of automated infrastructure provisioning and manual upgrade and maintenance of infrastructure. The fourth challenge is the lack of automated delivery pipelines. Modern tools support source code management, automated build processes, automated testing, and automated code promotions. These are integrated and streamlined within a modern delivery pipeline. For most legacy applications, modern delivery pipelines do not fit naturally. The million-dollar dilemma is about legacy versus new development. At one side, it's clear that newly developed applications offers so many benefits. But on the other side, the core business for most organizations still runs on legacy platforms. These legacy applications, which are running in production for many years, represents years of investments and efforts. The established code base in these legacy applications contains a lot of encapsulated knowledge gained through years of testing and real-world use. Also, considering the time it takes to build a new software and make it stable in a real-life environment after going through years of real-world use, what is the new development today will become a legacy in future. To gain benefits from both sides, we need tools which are built with modern technology features, but at the same time have abilities to quickly integrate the code logic already written in legacy applications. For today's demo, I'll be using one of those softwares. I'll be using Camunda, which at its core is a process automation software, but it brings many other capabilities with it. It is a no-code, low-code development platform. It supports end-to-end orchestration. It is very developer friendly. It makes business IT collaboration very easy. And it is open source software with open architecture. For the purpose of this demo, as a preparatory step, we will need a Camunda Modeler setup. The Camunda Modeler will be used to build the BPMN model as a design and development perspective. And then we will also need Camunda platform, which will be used to run the software we built. And also, it's an optional, but if we have a REST client, it will be useful to demonstrate to access the Camunda platform using an external REST service. Installing these softwares are easy, and I'll leave a link in description for the steps to install. It takes approx 5 minutes to download, install, and make these softwares ready to go. So I'll skip their demonstration. So this is our Camunda modeler where we will be drawing our software. So I'll start with the BPMN diagram, the business process flow diagram. To start with, I will avoid the developer level complexities. So I will be drawing from a perspective of a business person, or maybe a business analyst or solution architect can draw it. And then later we will add more details from a development standpoint. To start, we can have a new BPMN diagram. I'll close this one. And so this is our start event. I'll name it as application received. And then after this, we will do application entry or data entry. Then we can do an automated process, which can be application submit. And then we will do a risk evaluation, maybe a system-driven risk evaluation to determine the level of risk on an application. After this, we can make different workflow paths to make the decision. So I put a gateway here. With this is the scenario where if the system couldn't automatically decide to approve or decline a policy, we will need a manual underwriter review. So I'll make a process or task for manual review. And then I'll put a gateway after this, after the manual review. With this gateway, we will need another process, which will be a policy decline, and another process, which will be a policy delivery after the approval. Okay, so this side, let's say I'll mark it as a green. This is a approval scenario, and this side is a decline scenario, so I'll mark it as red. And this one is basically a manual review scenario, so I'll mark it as yellow. And then this gateway, after the manual decision, if the underwriter decides to approve the policy, it will again go in an approval scenario. So that will be basically deliver policy. And then if underwriter decides to manually decline the policy, then it needs to go to the decline scenario. And these will be yes, no. And after this, we will have an AND event. Okay, so this is a very high-level process flow. Now I will add details. For now, I mean, these details can still be handled by a business person or a business analyst or solution architect, as well as a developer can also do these more details. So for the first part, we'll be marking this process as a user task. And then this one will be marking it as a service task, because we were saying this is an automated process. And this one we will mark it as a business rule task, because we'll be having business rules configured as part of this process. The decide manual underwriting process would again be a user task. And then the delivery policy, I mean, this can be a manual task, but for purpose of this demo, to hold the token flow here, I'll still mark it as a user task, and I'll have an opportunity to review the path once the policy is approved. Here, with this task, we can always have an external integration here, and we can have another service call to deliver policy or print a policy or send an email across or do an electronic delivery. Those options are open. We have the integration available, but for the purpose of this demo, I'll keep it as a manual task. And then for the deploying portion, I'll mark it as a script. The script, for the purpose of the demo, the script will simply put a log in a console, but in a real life scenario, we can have another script integrated or another REST service called from here, invoked for a declaration of policy and further action. So this is our BPMN diagram, which shows our process flow. In addition to this, Camunda also support DMN table where you can put your business rules, and the DMN table is like this, and it's as simple as putting the data in XLS, which a business person can provide the information and enter it in an DMN format here. I've already prepared this DMN table for the purpose of this demo, and I've chose the policy as first. That shows that as soon as I get the first match in this DMN table as the criteria, it will return the results. So for the calculation purpose for the evaluation of risk, I have age, face amount, and smoker state as my input criteria, and then risk is my output from this DMN calculation. And the logic works in a way that if my age is less than or equal to 25, for an example, for the first row, if my age is less than or equal to 25, my face amount is more than a million, more than or equal to a million, and if the person is a smoker, then we will classify the risk associated to this person as red. If the age is less than or equal to 25 with the row number 2, and face amount is over a million, but the person is non-tobacco, is not a smoker, then we can categorize it yellow and we can have a manual underwriting. And so if the amount is low and age is high, but the amount is low and the person is non-smoker, the last row, the row number 8, we can have him green and kind of auto approved as well. So these are different criteria here, which I put in here as the criteria. We can have more criteria added, and we can also have some default criteria added. But for the purpose of demo, I think that's a good enough information to work through. Now look back at our BPMN diagram, and let's now I'm changing the role. Now I'm working. Earlier I was looking at it from a business perspective. Now I am adding more technical details from a development perspective. So I'll go with the first node. This is an application entry. For the purpose of demo, I kept it manual. We can also have a external service integration where the electronic data gets submitted to this workflow, keeping it manual or keeping it a application entry process as well. Camunda allows us to do the REST service endpoint communication where we can fill in these details without having someone manually doing it, and some other application can do it through REST endpoint too. Okay, to start with, I'll put a name of this process, ID of this process. This ID would be the primary identifier for this process, and when we'll be deploying this process to Camunda platform, this ID will be the one we will be looking for to understand and to identify this process and execute it. Now, let's go to the first task, and let's add few example variables here to get application entered, which we'll be using in our evaluate risk part. So I'll add form fields here, and I'll name them. The ID would be, let's say, age, and type will be long, and level is age, and I'll put a default value here, 25. And then I'll add another one. I'll put the ID as face amount, and type again as long, label as face amount, and I'll put default value as 1 million. I'll add another variable. This time I'll name it as smoker state, and type as boolean, label as and then the default value is false. At this point, what I can do is I can save this diagram in my local drive and name the file name same as ID, although it's not necessary, but just for as a best practice for me to remember, I'll name it same as um, okay. Now let's move to the next process. Because this is an automated process, we want to put, I mean, we have an opportunity here. We can do multiple types of integration here. For the automation, we can choose a Java class, we can do an expression, we can do delegate expression, and then external. We can also call an external service. We can put a connector, and we can have a REST service called here. For the purpose of this demo, I'll be using expression, and I'll be just setting a variable here for the purpose of demonstration to have this automated execution. So using a $sign and then execution dot set variable, and then the name of the variable, then the name of the variable, and then I'm setting date time and to date to set to the variable to tell what's the value of the variable. Okay, let's move to the next process, evaluate risk. In this, we need to bind this evaluate risk task to the DMN table where we have our business rules. So for that purpose, I mean, same as automated process, we have multiple options here, Java class, expression, and then connector, external. But for the purpose of this demo, I'll be using DMN table for our business rules. Here we'll be binding it with the DMN table unique ID, and then I will be using binding as latest version, and then the result variable will be using, I mean, we have defined the output result variable in DMN as risk level. So we'll be using the same here, and then the output is a single entry because our output is a single entry. And then we can go back in our DMN table and look at it, and basically all the calculation results would come after this integration would come to this task out as an output of this task. Now let's look at the gateway. The gateway will have these variables coming in, and then gateway will be making the token to flow on an appropriate path based on the decision has been made by the evaluate risk task. So in this case, we have green, yellow, and red. So we need to define these paths for gateway. So for green, we'll be putting an expression here which will tell, so because we are determining based on the risk level. So this is the expression which will work for this one. And then the same applies for yellow. We will put an expression. We'll be using yellow in this case. And the same applies for red. In this case, the expression will be red. Let's move to the next one. This is a manual handwriting process. We have chosen to keep it as a user task. So we will be having a form entry here, and based on that form entry, the user will be deciding if the user is approving the policy or declining the policy if it goes in a yellow path. So for this one, I'll be adding one form field, and I'll be naming that variable as approved, and the type will be Boolean, and label I can put and I'll leave the default value blank, and then this is good. Let's move to the next gateway. So for the next gateway, if my approval decision is approved, then it needs to go to this path. Otherwise, it needs to go to the decline path. So I'll choose that first one first. Again, expression, and this time I have the variable Boolean, so I will directly use that here. And same applies for the no path. And at this time, it will be not an approved scenario, so I'll be using a not here. And let's move to the next task, that's delivery policy. We have already made it a user task. So the token will stay here to tell us, hey, the policy got approved, and that will, at the time of execution, we will have a better visibility to see that how the token got moved. And then once this is completed, once a user comes in and kind of claim it and complete this task, it will move to a end event. If we go in a no path, this is a decline policy scenario. In this, we want to have an example script run for console logging. That's just an example. We can also have an external script or external services integrated here. For the purpose of demo, I'm just keeping a simple script here. So I'll be using script format as JavaScript, and I'll be using a command to print the message application declined. That's it. Our complete development process is done. And now we'll be looking for ways to deploy this work and then how to run and execute. To deploy this software solution, in this Camunda Modeler, we have a button at the bottom, which we can click and deploy this Camunda BPMN diagram to the Camunda platform. Before I do that, everything what we built here in a form of diagram is parallelly being built in an XML format behind the scene, and we can right here see it in XML format as well as in a diagrammic format. So this is the documentation from a business perspective, as well as the implementation, a real life implementation. And that's the beauty of using a no-code, low-code tool, that while you are doing the business specifications, parallelly you are building and doing the implementation as well. So I click the deployment process, and my deployment name would be same as, I can choose another name, but I'm keeping it same as the ID of my process. And then it will be using my local Camunda platform REST endpoint, that's localhost 8080 and then engine REST, and it will be using the REST service exposed. And then here I can choose the file, the DMN file, and then I'll be clicking the deploy button, which will be completing the deploy. At this point, I'm done with the Camunda Modeler. Let me go to the browser. I already have my platform installed on my machine and running on my local. So I'll go to localhost 8080 to go to the UI screen of my Camunda platform. You can think of it as a server where you will be deploying your software solution you built, and then we will see how we execute the tasks in it. So I'll be using my default user ID password demo for this one. And then once I'm in, I can see the dashboard here where I can see my personal profile. I can go in an admin section. I can see the task list and cockpit. So the cockpit basically tells me what all processes, software solutions and processes we have deployed on this particular Camunda platform. And then the task list is all the user actions goes here, and then individual users can log in and go to their particular task list, select it, and perform those tasks. It's kind of getting things in their plate, and then once they are done with it, submitting and completing it. So let's look at the cockpit first. We have already deployed this process definition, and then with this process definition, we have a that DMN attached. So we have a decision definition deployed too. So let's go inside the process definition. Our ID demo one insurance is here. If I would have multiple process instances here deployed, I would see multiple process definitions here with different unique ID. For this demo, we are using this one. If I click in this, I see my process diagram here, which demonstrate what all these processes are. And I am able to see this definition key here. And then once I start instances, I can see the instance details here at the bottom. Let me go back to the decision definition. And if I see here, I'll have multiple decision definitions if I had it deployed. At this point of time, I only have one. So I click on this one, evaluate risk, and I can see that this DMN table I created is here. I'll go back to the dashboard. I have the process definition, and now I can go back to so we had three things there, the cockpit and then the task list and the admin section. So I'm right now in the cockpit, but if I want to switch to the task list, I can go in the home icon and go to the task list. If I'm in task list, if I go in the home item, I'll see cockpit and admin here. So you can easily switch back and forth. So I'm going back to, so I'm in a task list, and here from task list, there are multiple ways to execute a process and get the multiple tasks completed in the Camunda. One way is to use this UI. I'll first demonstrate the software solution we built using the UI, and then later on we can do the same thing through Postman as well. So we can look at that in later part of the demonstration. So to start a process, let's say we had an application received. So I click and start process, and I'll choose the process, what process to be started, and start it. And once that's started, if I go back to cockpit, I can see the process there. And sorry, you can see that there is one running process instance. And if I go in the process definitions, I see one running instance here. And if I go inside it, I have a visual representation of where my process is. So because we had a task here for a user to perform, the token got stopped here, and there is an action needs to be performed. So there is a task. So we should go in a task list and should be able to see there is a task here. So I'm going in a task list. And if I go in the task list, see we have a task showing here. If I click on it, it shows me that there is a user form to be filled. As a user, I can pretend like I'm an application entry user, and I can claim this task and perform this application entry. So the way we configured our DMN table was that if I choose the age 25 and a 1 million, and if I'm not a smoker, then it will go to a yellow path. So let's do that. I have submitted it. And with this, let's go to cockpit to see where our process is. See, so it flowed through the path and made a decision, and I can see it's there for a manual process. If I go inside this process instance, I can see all the variables and with the value assigned, and the application submit process, which was automated, and we set a date to here. See, the date has been set here with today's date and timestamp of my execution. And then all other variables. If you look at the risk level, the variable being set by the evaluate risk process, and it is yellow here. And you can look at all these variables here. I can also go inside the process decision definitions, and in this, I see there is a running instance. And if I look at this running instance, the decision table can visually show me that for this particular instance, what DMN table was selected and how it determined the value yellow. So I might have multiple yellow entries as a result, but I will know exactly which business rule actually determined the decision as yellow. So I'll go back to the dashboard, and now because this was a manual process again, and the process is waiting here. I have created another user as an underwriter because this time it is going for an underwriter review. So what I can do is I can go on another browser window and type log into the Camunda, and this time I can log in as an underwriter. So let's say I have another underwriter who will be working on an approval process. So that underwriter can go in the task list and see the task, and here it can claim to that task, and he say, hey, yeah, there is a policy and I need to approve or decline. I do not choose approved, and I just complete the task, and this should send the process to the decline. And I see in my command prompt, see it's the latest decline with this transaction. Okay, so the task of underwriter is done. Let me go back to my original demo user, and then I can initiate. I can refresh here and see if that task is done. Yes, that task is done, and I can go to the cockpit and see if there are 0 running instances, and I can go inside the process definition and see it visually. There is no running instances. I'll go back to task list and do an start process. And this time we will choose the application entry criteria as to go in a green flow. So we can have the criteria as maybe age 35 and face amount is less and the person doesn't smoke. So this criteria should send it to the, as per our business rules, this criteria should send it to the green path without any manual review. So let's see if that's going to happen. So I completed the task, and then now I'll go into the cockpit and see. Okay, it went to the yellow path, decide about application. Let's see how it went there. So going inside. Okay, and let's look at the decision definition. And let's look at the latest instance. It shows as yellow because it's greater than equal to my green criteria is less than 500K. So let's go back and first let's complete this task, and then I'll go back to an underwriter user and see there is a task. This time I'll claim it and we'll go in an approved flow. So I'll complete it. This time this should have gone in an approved flow. So let's look at the cockpit. See, so this time it reached to an approved flow. If we go look at the variables, the risk level is yellow. It was approved as true, and then rest of the details are here. And to be able, as a case manager or as a policy processor, I can perform the delivering policy manually. Maybe I can manually print it, or if we would have built this process to integrate with other system to do the electronic delivery, we could have done that too. So I'll go back in the task list and take this task for the manual delivery of the policy. I'll claim it because I don't have to put any entry here. I'll just mark it complete. And this way, if I go back in the cockpit, all of that instance is completed and the policy is, the process is no running instances now, and I can visually see this too. I'll go back to the task list, and this time I'll start the process, and this time we will try to enter the test data, which is for a green flow. So I have let me claim this, and then I'll enter the test data as 35, and let's do 400K and no smoker. Let's mark it complete and then go back to cockpit and let's see where it is. Cool, so it went to the green flow. We can see the variables here. The smoker state is false, risk level is green. And if we go back to the DMN table, see the latest instance and see, because the age was 35 and amount was 400K and smoker state is false, the row number 8 got satisfied and we got the result as green. and that made that decision. So let's go back to the task list and deliver this policy, claim it, and submit. And if I go back to the process definition, this should clear that instance. Now, at this point, we completed the demonstration of executing the processes through the Camunda platform user interface screen. Camunda also allows REST API interfaces. If you are a business person and not interested in looking at the REST API, you can skip the remaining part of the video. Camunda have a very rich REST API interface. The goal of the REST API is to provide access to all relevant interfaces of the Camunda engine. So all the tasks we performed using Camunda dashboard, the Camunda UI, the same task could be performed using REST API service calls, and we can use any REST client or any other application can do a REST service call and perform those actions, whatever we performed here on the dashboard. For example, when we were in the task list and performed this start process action, we can look at the relevant Camunda REST API interface. I have an example prepared for the same. In Camunda, the normal pattern for the REST API calls is to have the URL for Camunda dashboard and then engine-rest and then remaining method specification for individual REST API calls. In this case, we have process definition and then key and then the ID of the relevant process we want to start and then a start action. So, and in the header part, we need to provide the content type. In this case, I'll be providing application JSON. And in body, if we need to start a process with some variables, we can pass those variables. For our example, the process starts without variables, so I'll put empty JSON here. So if I invoke this transaction, this should create a new process instance. So we see there is a new process instance got created. Let's go back to the cockpit and see if we can have that new process instance created. I can see a new running process instances. If I go inside, I can visualize there is a process instance created and it's waiting for a task to be performed. Now to perform this task, there are two ways. Either I can go on UI and perform this task through this UI interface, or as an alternative, the same action can be performed through a REST API interface too. So for now, we will look at how we can do the same thing through REST API interface. So to get, we can get a task ID from this dashboard as well, but to represent how a REST client or any other application will pick it, we'll need to first get the task ID. So I have a request prepared for that. So the URL pattern is still same. All I need to do is use a task and then pass a parameter of for which process we need a task. If we have multiple tasks, we will see multiple, but at this point of time for this process, we only have one task. So we should have one task coming in the result. So let's send the request and see we have the results coming in. And I have an ID here, which can be grabbed. This is my task ID, and I can use this to complete the task we need to perform. So I have another example created where I have the task URL where I need to pass the task ID, and then I need to perform a complete action here. To perform the complete action, I need to pass some variables, which we, in the task list, we were supposed to fill it on UI. Here I can pass it through a REST interface. So for an example, I am providing here age 35, face amount 500K, and smoker state is false. So let me submit this transaction. It's success. And we can go back to our cockpit and see where this task is. So the task moved from here and then automated task got performed. And finally, it's because the criteria was for the yellow, it moved to the next user action. Now we can do the same user action again through REST interface. So I'll go in the REST interface. This time I'll again use the same process definition key, but the task would be different because earlier the task was application entry. This time the task should be decide about application. So let me send this transaction again and see I have a new task coming here in the list. I only have one task here. So I'll take the ID from here. And I have another request example created to perform this decide about application transaction. Again, the same thing. The header will have application JSON as the content type, and the body will have the variables to be provided. For this particular task, I need to provide the Boolean indicator of root in the JSON. So I'll use the task here. And again, the task URL is the same. We just need to perform a complete action on it and pass the variables. So in this case, my variable is approved. It's marking it approved. For example, I'll pass false here. So I'm declining this manual underwriting in this example. So I'll submit send, and I see a success here. So let's see where the task moved. See, the task got completed, and I do not have any more tasks pending or running on this board. So we performed all of the UI actions through REST API interfaces for this example. So that was the demonstration of how we can use REST API interfaces. If we go to docs.camunda.org and we go here under the REST API references, there is a very good documentation on all of the REST APIs exposed, and there are different parameters and method IDs. So for example, we looked at the task. We can go into task, and then we did the complete action. So here we have the complete action, and it tells how we need to pass the parameter. If we need to go in details, it tells all the specifications for this REST API. So there are hundreds of REST API interfaces for Camunda. Those can be used. I just took few examples for our today's demo. That's all I have for the purpose of this demo. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining with me.